Who are you? And on top of that, how do you know? When I was a freshman in high school, going out for track, I had defined myself as an athlete at that point in time. And track and field is kind of boring to an extent, right? You're running and whatnot, you're running on a circle. And I had gotten it in the back of my head somewhere along the line that I was going to be a pole vaulter. Now, there's a lot of stuff that goes into being a pole vaulter. I had no idea what it even was. I just was out there one day during football and saw the runway for pole vault and thought, what do they do there? Someone told me pole vault. I figured I have to do it. And I started off pretty good. I was strong, right? And there is an amount of muscling yourself off of the pole and over the vault that goes into pole vaulting. The problem was I never got any better. I kept going. I went to practice. I worked hard. I never got any better. A long time later, my coach would apologize to me because he came to the realization that he had taught me wrong. There's a lot of mechanics that goes into pole vaulting. You have to get things just right, and if you don't, well, you don't get over the pole, right? You don't get over the crossbar. And being left-handed, he taught me in reverse. He thought, but there was an element of switching things up that he didn't translate. Regardless, my freshman year, my first meet as a pole vaulter, some kid was so good. First meet, freshman year, he was going to attempt 10 feet. That's a long way up there. And he took the run. He planted the pole. So for anyone who doesn't know, there's this little box in front of the mat. It's a little metal box. You plant the pole in it. Then you have the speed and the strength that it shoots you up, right? He went up, and he had the height to clear it. By God, he might have had the height to clear 11 feet. He didn't dismount from the pole correctly, and he landed on the ground. I mean, the grass, the ground. That was red flag number one. Red flag number two, this was the early days of the internet, and I told my friend I was pole vaulting. And he said, oh, have you seen this? One of the very first viral videos of the internet that a lot of people won't remember was a pole vaulter. And he was, I don't know if he was an Olympian, but he was at least doing Olympian heights. We're getting to the poem, I promise. But he goes up, and he was at the very edge of the pole, right? So you're talking 13 feet probably this kid was going to clear. And he cleared it. Turns, pushes off the pole, and in the meantime, while he was in the air, here's the crossbar, here's his pole. The pole slides under the crossbar. Well, that fella took that pole, end on, right in his junk. That's red flag number two. That is terrifying. Around this same time, at my favorite college at the time, K-State, a pole vaulter planted the pole, went up in the air, the pole snapped, and he came back down on the back of his head. I think he was at least temporarily paralyzed. I don't know if I never kept up with the story. That's red flag number three. Red flag number four. And I know this is getting drawn out, but please stay with me. I promise I have a point. Red flag number four. My sophomore year, there was a kid who transferred in, same grade as me, dumber than a mud fence. And I'm not saying this to insult him. I think that mud fences might be insulted by comparing their intelligence to his. I mean, just dumb. And this kid was phenomenal. This kid, they were prepping him to go to state. Okay, that's how good he was. And I realized in that moment, a pole vaulter's skill is inversely proportionate to his intelligence. And I said, look, I'm out. I tried it. I gave it my best. I'm not good. And we figured this out. May seem like a strange intro to a Halloween-type poem, but I promise there is a point here. So, I moved on. Became a sprinter. Was decent at that. Not great. Decent. And that was the end of my pole vaulting days. But how would I have known that I was not a pole vaulter had I not done that? Welcome to Strip Cover Lit, where we squeeze the bigger picture out of literature. I'm Adrian Fort, and we're here for a poetry discussion, which will appear in two different playlists here on the channel. Number one being the poetry discussion playlist, now over 800 videos strong. Number two being the classic haunts playlist, pursuing all of the classic haunts in lead up to Halloween 2025. The poem today is Theme in Yellow by Sandburg, and it reads as such. I spot the hills with yellow balls in autumn. I light the prairie cornfields, orange and tawny gold clusters, and I am called pumpkins. On the last of October, when dusk is fallen, children join hands and circle round me, singing ghost songs and love to the harvest moon. I am jack-o'-lantern with terrible teeth, and the children know I am fooling. Pumpkins, too, wear Halloween costumes. This poem made me think about the utility of something like Halloween, some day where we can dress up in ways that we are not. Explore those things, if even only momentarily. What is the social benefit of dressing up like someone else? Surely there must be some, right? This practice goes back, decades in the United States. It doesn't stop there. Here is a shamanic ritual mask from the Yupik people. This is an Alaskan native tribe. This is a shamanic mask, the practice of which is thought to go back at least 2,000 years. It's a long time for Halloween to go on. Here is something that may have led to the widespread practice of mask wearing. These are plaster-covered skulls of Jericho, possibly 9,000 years old. And we see here Mason Verger, I believe. So, this practice of wearing masks, of dressing up like someone else, this is not new. This is not something that is American in practice or origin. This is something that goes back very far with our type, with our people, with the human culture. We can go all the way back to plays in Greece where people were becoming actors. We can go all the way back to prehistoric ritual wherein people wore masks as part of coming-of-age rituals, as part of war rituals, all sorts of things. But why? Why would this be necessary? Why would it be useful to do this? Now, I think it's only a small step from what you see on your screen here, covering a skull in plaster in order, is a small step from that to creating a mask that we wear to embody that other person. The story I told at the beginning of this was a story of me learning what I'm not through putting on the face of a pole vaulter. I learned that right there, whatever that is. That's not me. That is not for me. There is too much danger in relationship to the potentiality of reward. And that was a learning point for me. Because it forced me to ask the question, what am I getting out of sport? What is here for me? The glory of passing over a crossbar? Maybe, if that's something that you find, in which you find glory, sure. It didn't seem worth the risk looking at somebody rack himself on the end of a carbon fiber pole. Just didn't seem like it was possibly worth it. The social utility of adopting a face that is not ours is it lets us further define the face which is ours. Dressing up, assuming the role of someone or something else, taking time from our lives to pretend to be someone else? Is this something that we leave in childhood? Certainly, it does not have to be. If we carry it with us into adulthood, this idea of play, this idea of role play, don't Google that. This idea of assuming the skin of someone else teaches us empathy, if nothing else. And I think, perhaps, I'm saying this very in the moment, right? Halloween, when I was a kid, was a much bigger deal, it seems, than what it is today. I remember going into a grocery store and they would have a haunted house made out of packages, 12 packs of Coca-Cola. You remember that? Going into a grocery store in order to see the Halloween decorations. I don't see things like that anywhere anymore. Grocery stores, notoriously low margin. You don't make a whole lot of money running a grocery store. They used to put people on payroll to run around in haunted houses constructed with hours of labor, made out of 12 packs of Coke that they then had to sit on until they sold through them for a 31-day month. Start maybe beginning of October, right? I've always wondered when those went up. Did people have to work all night in order to construct those haunted houses? Were there maps? Were there outlines? Were there blueprints of those things? It's always fascinated me since I've become an adult, and they've disappeared. Maybe part of the reason that society itself seems to be struggling with identity. Society itself, I'm not picking on individuals. I'm saying society itself seems to be struggling with identity. What is our culture? Is because we no longer temporarily wear the mask of someone else. Maybe the reason individuals are struggling so much with meaning, perhaps so much with their own identities, are struggling so much with ideas of self-worth is because we no longer have the sense of play in society. We cannot temporarily wear the mask of another and see how it feels. See if we can justify the actions that they partake. See if we can understand why someone would be some way. Very little play in society anymore. Very little of the idea of trying something. Nothing can be temporary anymore. And I think in large part the internet is to blame for that. You made a stupid post on Facebook when you were getting out of high school and someone still has it screen capped on their phone. Right? So I think that part of the idea of society, if there is manifest societal rot, cultural decay, part of that is we can no longer define what our society, what our culture, what our individual identities are because we do not allow ourselves the time, the place, the freedom to adopt the thoughts, the feelings, the actions, the face of anyone else. I see this in literature a lot. You look at Faulkner, for example, going back 100 years, right? The characters in Faulkner are so varied and so many layers of gray that they feel real. Everything I've read that is new, even George Saunders. I love George Saunders' writing. George Saunders can't write an interesting character to save his life. All of his characters are, and maybe I'm wrong, right? this is my own judgment, all of his characters are very one note. Now, that one note might have a couple of different songs, but the characters are one note. And 10th of December, for example, everyone is stupid. Everybody. And George Saunders, I think, to my experience, is one of the greatest writers of our day. But he can't... Look, I read Lincoln in the Bardo. There was nothing there for me. George Saunders judges his characters on the page. Going back just to a writer that died in the 90s, as recent as the 90s, Charles Bukowski, invited you into the poem in order to judge him. Not to judge the characters, not to partake in his judgments on something else, some fleeting individual from his life. No, you were there to judge him. And he was allowing it. And he was showing you how dirty he was. And he was showing you how well he knew the English language, how intelligent he must be for the ability to write in that way. But he was the dirty dog. Maybe how we will get ourselves out of the presumptive rot and decay that our culture is, that our society is, that ourselves are suffering through, is through reintroducing the idea of play. That is all I have for this video. If you like or appreciate what it is that I do here, hitting the like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other literature lovers. If you find yourself here by chance but not design, literature is the only thing I talk about on this channel, dropping multiple videos every single week. And as always, I hope to have you back for the next one.